Dangerfield.
All right there. So I've just spent an hour talking to the wonderful Posie Parker. And I'm in love with her. What an amazing, wonderful woman. It was a great chat, but disappointingly, as I said to her at the beginning of the video, there's a chance this software won't work because it regularly fucks up, and it did. It screwed up the visuals. I've left them in, but I mean, talk about men infiltrating women's spaces. There's me and her side by side, but my image keeps flicking in hers. It's kind of hard to watch, so if you just want to listen to it, that might be an option. But you do get to see a lot of her, and she's great, and she's engaging, and she's fighting the good fight. So please do watch this. It's a great chat. It was a real pleasure to do. So here you go. Me and Posie Parker. Thank you very much for coming on my channel. I made a video about your appearance on This Morning. I think it's more. All my subscribers absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved you. The first thing I wanted to ask you, what is it like being in that kind of environment, absolutely knowing that you're it's just blatantly obvious that you're right. You know, this can't be the convoluted issue it's been portrayed as. Because in that environment, I would have felt like I was in a nightmare, a weird dream or something like that. So how did you cope with just... Because I could see it on your face, much a similar response you're giving me now. It's like, what's going on?
I think what was going through my head was, don't be rude. You may want to be invited back to talk about this further. And then Eamon, when I first met them, Eamon really crushed my hand, because he's such a masculine man. Yeah. And Ruth was very offish and sort of said to India, massive skulled India, oh, you're looking lovely today. It's been so long. It's so great to see you again. So I was like, oh, hello. Here we go then. Yeah. But the more they said, the more it was very difficult, very, very difficult not to just go, what the fuck? Are you insane? Am I really here facing these people who we know Mr. Eamon Holmes likes to tell rape victims that perhaps they should have got a taxi if they get raped on the way home. And he'd already made some crappy little jokes about Ruth's age and her not being intelligent. And so... And you'll know, and I didn't notice actually, but you did, that he did say India sees herself as a woman, but he didn't say I see India.
Or she's a woman. He didn't, because she's not. It's just blatantly obvious. That's a really good point, actually. I think I wouldn't be able to control myself in the way you did, and strategically that's bad. It was good work from you, absolutely. This is part of your activism and you want to be back on these places, but I would have absolutely flipped, and I really admire you for that.
Well, I haven't been back, so it didn't work.
You haven't been back?
Nobody's invited me anywhere. I think because of the sort of the media, liberal elite and all those other stereotypes we want to chuck at them, but because of the way the media is, they don't want anybody with really good arguments.
It's really bizarre. For people watching, tell us about the billboard. Because when I heard about this billboard, it was making trans people feel unsafe and all that. I thought, God, what did she write? What was this billboard? Or explain what the billboard was and what happened to you.
Right. So I'd got banned from Twitter, so I get mass reported all the time by what I like to call troons, which are trans loons. Thank you, Kiwi Farms. And I got banned, and I just thought, well, I still want to do something, but I'd also, the impetus for that would I'd also been ousted by lefty feminist circles. So I'm a bad person, and they'd accuse me of Islamophobia and racism, and so I was beginning to be this kind of toxic, you can't touch this woman, she really is everything that the left hates. And so I had to find something to be a little bit anonymous, and I was just thinking, well, what is the what is the absolute crux of this issue? In the very center of it, what's really happening? And what's really happening is the erasure of women.
Yeah.
And the first way that we do that is we change someone's language. And then once you've fucked around with the language, you mess around with people's thoughts. And then eventually people do say she for a bloke in a dress. And so I wanted to address the word woman, and you can't get any more neutral than the dictionary definition.
Yeah.
So I put that on a billboard because I knew these tantrumy arseholes would say it was transphobic, and then that would tell the general public what was going on.
Yeah, brilliant, absolutely amazing. Because I read, I think, made them feel unsafe.
Yeah.
I,
Oh,
I lived in Soho for a hell of a long time. I had a lot of trans friends, and they absolutely hate all this stuff. They really opposed to it. They don't give a shit what you call them. These are hard people. And
yeah.
they just want to get on with their lives, really. And they feel that all this nonsense over the last few years has just kind of put them in the spotlight where they don't want to be. And I get the feeling that a lot of people do want to be in the spotlight. And a lot of this kind of, like you say, tantrum throwing. I mean, as babies throw tantrums, they want attention. And it just reminds me of that a lot of the time. So your billboard said adult female.
It said woman, so I raised the money for the billboard because I don't have any, despite what everybody says. So I raised the money with these T-shirts.
That was it.
That's the billboard.
And it really is that. A bit of me thought there might be something underneath. There's a link to a website, but that can hardly make anyone feel unsafe. And here we are. Here we are. And it's amazing that no one wants to touch you, because when I saw it, look, I won't pretend otherwise. I've got big problems with feminism, very, very big problems. But I watched you on there, and I just thought you were incredibly attractive. You are attractive in the traditional way, but I mean, you're appealing. What a pleasure to listen to this woman, and that's what everyone else said. Everyone in the comments, and for you to say that people don't want you on now. What a turnout. You are not a role model. You lovely lady with good views and strong conviction. No, we don't want you.
I'm a married, heterosexual, stay-at-home mother of 4 children, very pedestrian, quite dull. I didn't ever intend to stay at home with my children. I thought my jobs would be too exciting, but then once I had my kids, I wanted to stay home. And I'm fortunate to be able to do that. So I can't be castigated by the trans as a right-winger, a Christian, some joyless lesbian or feminist. Not that I'm saying those are true tropes, but they would be quite easy just to pigeonhole me in a little infighting as well. I think if I could just be cast aside as a lesbian, and it was an infighting in LGBT as well. Sure. But I'm a regular, normal woman who goes and picks up my kids and has boring conversations at the school gate.
You are the cornerstone of Western society, the one that they absolutely hate. So I understand that. I don't think they're fans of that in general. Have you had other run-ins with the doctor I saw you talking to?
Well, I met him numerous times on Twitter. I'm sure he's one of the reasons I'm banned. Him and his so he's got a friend called Stephanie Hayden, who is currently possibly in court, having had a woman arrested in front of her kids for misgendering him. And unlike me, so I've been interviewed by the police twice for saying that you shouldn't cut children's testicles off.
It's worth thinking about that, isn't it? It's worth thinking about that kind of thing.
Well, this is what's happened, and I'm sure you know, because I don't know too much about your channel, because I've done a bit of because I don't want to know too much about you, because I don't think it's relevant, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not interested in your other views. I mean, I'm sure I am really, but I don't want to get into stuff with people that is going to be divisive, because this is far too important to listen. Other noise.
Loads of people on my Telegram were like, "What? You're going to talk to a feminist?" And I was like, "Yeah, we've got things in common."
Yeah,
and that's what I'm here for as well.
You can't fight this by me telling you that something else I've heard about you is something I disagree. Exactly. Well, that's completely pointless.
So go on, the doctor. Because again, for people, if I haven't made this clear, there's this doctor. Is he a GP doctor?
Yeah, Dr. Adrian Harrop.
Imagine
He's
he was your GP. God, man, save us. And so he's confessed this. He was the person that complained to the owners of the billboard advertising space and successfully got it removed. And of course, I understand why businesses have to do this, because activists will make their lives hell and threaten their livelihoods. I'd rather them be stronger. Sorry?
I don't get it actually. I don't. I sort of thought corporate interests were way above some weird people complaining. They could have easily said, actually, we've consulted the ASA, the Advertising Standard Agency, and it doesn't breach any rules. So these are our rules. So tough. They
No,
didn't have
I would like them to do that, but I know that these people mobilise numbers and their phones will be ringing, their locks will be getting super glued together, and they kind of know that the people on the right side of history don't behave like that. But
yeah.
if they do wrong by the activists, professional activists, people who do this as their life's goal, they're going to get in trouble. You know, I was banned from PayPal last week, and there's no link to my YouTube channel on my PayPal account. There was no link, so someone has actively contacted them and said this man spreads hate, and I just don't. I'm not hateful, I'm not racist, I'm not sexist, I'm not homophobic, I'm not Islamophobic. I do raise a lot of issues that are considered controversial, but much like yours are considered controversial, you know, women are adult females. So and in the example of PayPal, I think they feel the same. It's just like, look, just chuck him off, because we don't want these activists on our back. Anyway, sorry, I took the emphasis
That's
off
what
what we
I
were saying.
probably forgot what I was talking about. Oh,
The
Adrian Harrop.
yes, the billboard.
So he complained. They took it off. They issued a statement that said, that said if they'd looked at the copy, they would have realised. Like if they'd looked at the fact that it was a dictionary definition, they would have realised that it was motivated by hate.
It's just absurd, isn't it? It's just. I mean, I've been shocked by the way men's spaces have been attacked over the years, and you know, they're just not allowed. You're not allowed to hang around as men, just as men. And I was interested in your point, and this seems to be one of your main points, really, that women's spaces are being invaded by men
Yeah,
in dresses, and of course they are. The story you said about a trans woman police officer can give you an intimate search.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
because they can just say I'm a woman, it could be a man in trousers with a beard and like, you know, 500
Yeah.
pounds. I'm a woman today. You know, drop
Well,
your
the thing,
trousers.
I don't give a shit what length they've gone to. I don't care if they've taken hormones for 25 years and they don't have a penis and they've inverted their penis and all their skin has necrosis. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, women read men as men. Now that might be different for men. I think men are a little bit more easily fooled. If someone presents well enough and their breasts are created well enough, then I think sometimes, a man doesn't see that. But we are brought up, and this is not a feminist argument even. I think this is just common sense. Women are brought up to understand our threats, and our threats are more than men's threats. And that's not to say that men
No,
aren't
I
attacked
agree.
more.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I agree.
But if I hear footprints behind me when I'm walking home, my husband's like 6 foot and massive, and so if he hears footprints, there's not a single bit of him that thinks, "Oh, I better watch out." I mean, if there's a group of lads, then maybe he would, but I would instantly need to know that that person behind me isn't a threat. And so, if you've got a big face, if you've got big hands, if you've got an Adam apple, I'm going to help you as a man.
Yeah, no. You know, there was something very interesting that our friend India said in the conversation with you. One part where she said she was she was basically appealing to some of my best friends are black. That one when she said
Yeah,
I've got
yeah,
loads of women friends, and then she said my mother's a woman, obviously. And I was
yeah.
thinking, yeah, why obviously? Because she gave birth to you. Are you liable to be having any children, India?
Sam doesn't think he's a woman, though.
Huh?
So he left his son out of that little list of who thinks he's a woman.
Oh,
Because what
interesting.
he transitioned when his son was 16, I mean, Jesus Christ,
I know, it's
that's it's
devastating.
something. I just can't imagine. Once I have my kids, and I'm not saying that they come first in every second of everything that I ever do, But once I had children, my duty is to them. So especially until they leave home, and I just thought, what teenage boy wants his dad on Big Brother Celebrity massaging his fake breasts with lotion every single night, shouting at an octogenarian, "I am a real woman." I mean, that's just not very female.
So that you know that the son, India's son doesn't support it.
He doesn't.
And
Well, if he does and he's changed his mind and he's come round, there is no public display, and I pretty much think India being the sort of fame obsessed. I mean, he was a mediocre northern local reporter, and as soon as he had his uh, breasts inserted, he suddenly became of interest.
okay, what do you think about? What do you think? What, because I've seen men transition into women now winning in sports. You know, women's sports is under threat. I saw that weightlifter who was just an absolute monster, and you got the silver and bronze. These tiny women standing next to us. Now, if you've trained all your life, you've kind of sacrificed your teenage years, getting up, going out training before school, that not going out drinking, not partying, and you get to the final of some event, some athletic event, and you're beaten by a man.
So disgusting, isn't it? And I mean, in America, it's so much worse because you've got college places. So you've got the difference between like 80 to $100,000. That makes a difference whether or not some boy who's decided to transition beats you to the bursaries or the scholarships that you get to go to the elite colleges.
Yeah,
Um, and the best thing about the sport thing, though, is it will peak trans men because men care about sport and fairness in those sorts of ways more than they give a shit about a woman being able to go into a changing room and get changed and feel
sure.
comfortable. Maybe not men in your sort of arena, because I think in order to have some of the more anti-feminist views, and I'm no longer a feminist, but in order to have some
Ba,
more of
ba,
your
ba, 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 ba. But I like to think that's from the beginning of this video you've changed your mind. Just my aura.
it's fucking feminists that I've met. That's what's changed my mind.
Terrifying people. Yeah, sorry, terrifying people.
Well, no, what feminist? Like, I don't know if I believe in the patriarchy, and I've asked people to sort of say, well, what do you mean? Like, it's all well, and I can accept sexism. Right, I think that happens to me quite frequently. My husband's never been to Tesco's, and someone tells him on the way in that they'd like to shove their dicks up his arse.
No.
Um, pardon my expression, but nobody's done that. Like, when he walks around, my husband's free to walk around without anybody telling him whether or not he's good looking
Yeah.
or whether they want to have sex with him. So I know sexism exists, but and I know that I chose to stay home, so I maybe alter the gender pay gap. So I can see real things, but when you talk about this ethereal patriarchal force or whatever, I just get to a point where I think, well, I haven't read enough books to convince me that that is a practical thing that's going on in my life. But what feminists have done, and not the decent ones, and there's loads of lovely women that I've met, but what they do is they seem to duplicate the hierarchy of the patriarchy, which they claim to be fighting against. And what they do is they just duplicate it. And then you're either good or you're bad. You can't talk to the right wing because feminism is supposed to be left wing, which is bullshit. It's not. It's supposed to be women centered. And so, yeah, I've fallen out of love with women. And I feel that if I put myself as a feminist campaigner, then I instantly just put off loads of people from listening to what I say.
Sure. I mean, I have other questions with feminism. I think it's guilty over the last sort of 4 or 5 decades of aiming to make women more like men and aiming to make men more like women. I think the idea of encouraging mothers to work, I think, is a disgusting thing to do. I absolutely think it is. I think if you've just given birth to a child, fucking look after it. I think the sending of mothers to work has corrupted our communities. They've completely dissolved because when I grew up, my mother was part of the community. She met up with other mothers and they done things. They put on fetes, they put on jumble sales. We had a street party, like a street club, and all these things. And sending mothers off to work, I think, has had a terrible effect on our communities.
Yeah. Well, your body takes at least a year to recover after giving birth, whether you stay home or not.
Get out there
And
after
so,
four weeks. Go on.
I also have an issue when people, this is not going to be popular, but when people say dads are as good as mothers, um, my husband didn't wake up in the middle of the night 3 seconds before my baby, but I did because I've got this chemical link with my
Yes,
baby. It
yes.
meant, your breast would start leaking and you'd know that you had to, and also children crying drives me insane. Now, my husband could listen to it, not that he did because he's a fantastic father and brilliant, but it would physically drive me insane until that baby stopped. And I think that is
Yeah.
I think that's an evolutionary thing so that we don't let our babies cry to death.
No, I
And
agree, and I think I absolutely agree, and I think men don't make good mothers. I don't think they do. You know,
well, they can breastfeed now if you're trans and you take enough drugs. There are men who, say, I call them autogynephiles, because they're obsessed with embodying a vagina. That's essentially what half of the people who call them transgender, trans women, not transsexuals, although I still have issues with transsexuals.
although in fairness, transsexuals, what we used to call trannies, they've been kind of nudged out of it because I don't think the trans lobby really wants to support sort of Joe Blogg's working class man in a beard with a
No,
dress.
no, because, well, you've got your transvestite that we've always accepted that they were
Sorry, that's what I
fetishists.
meant.
Yeah,
Transvestite, yeah.
they've always been fetishists. We know that. We know that men have a greater propensity to have a fetish than women. And so we sort of, I just don't want to I just don't want to see it. Thanks. Keep your fetish at home.
What?
I don't want to see it. I'm not going to go out in a gimp suit with a ball in my mouth and ask everybody to treat me like, something brave.
No, it was nice to hear you suggest it though. What what do you make? There is a school of thought, a school of medical thought that suggests that transsexuality, men to woman, is to do with some kind of. I don't know a lot about this, but I'm suggesting that you might. It's to do with the man finding himself attractive in women's clothes and with breasts and makeup and all that sort of thing. I mean, the little I read seemed it kind of the amount of times I've heard transsexuals in interviews say exactly what India said. She went, "I don't get a kick out of this." Well, no one suggested
Yeah,
you did.
but
That's in your head.
I think they do. I
Yeah.
think that the compulsion. So I'm heterosexual, 100% heterosexual. That's all I've ever been. Um, there's nothing that could convince me to have any other sexuality. So that's what the trans experience is. There's nothing to convince them. So let me just digress a minute. When these heterosexual men decide that they want to be women, most of them just want their own breasts, basically. They don't want to lose their penis. And then what you have is this whole group of women called trans widows, where their husbands transition and the husbands no longer want any intimacy with them because they're too turned on by themselves.
Right.
And loads of the family money on themselves, on their clothes, on wigs, and then they just become inwardly obsessed with themselves as women. And I would advise any woman whose husband even has a minor propensity to want to put her clothes on, to seriously protect her finances and be ready
No,
to
that
stop.
that's an amazing point. I mean, I've had a friend I used to know. Not we weren't good friends, but he was from my hometown, and he's recently transitioned. I mean, he's been kind of vague about what it is, but there's just loads of pictures of him with blusher, big red lips, purple lip lines, and all the girls in the comments like, "You look fabulous, honey." And he's like, "Oh, thank you, darling." And I'm like, "Yeah, what about his two toddler children, two boys, I think, 4 and 6, and his wife? What kind of a mess is he?"
Isn't it? It's really abusive, I think.
Yeah.
Really, really abusive.
Um,
And I don't understand any woman that stays. I don't understand any woman that stays with that. I mean, if I really like my husband's proper blokey, right? And that's part of I don't have unconditional love with my husband. If he turned into a prick, we just get divorced.
yeah, yeah.
So these women that stay, I'm just thinking, well, what about you?
And conversely, if he turned into a prick, you wouldn't love him, and if he cut his prick off, you wouldn't love him either. What do you make of this approach? Because this is the one that I seem to have the most sort of faith in. I don't know if that's the right word, but I believe in gender dysphoria. I believe that someone can feel like they're in the wrong body, right?
Yeah.
But I think the treatment for that is to treat that. That's a delusion.
It's
Not
weird, isn't it?
not
Therapy.
adjust sorry, not adjust the body to fit the delusion, treat the delusion.
Well, I don't know what will I do. I think if you're, I've got friends that believe in that it's a big pharma, a whole conspiracy from big pharmaceuticals, because once you have somebody on puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones or whatever, you've got lifelong patients.
Yep.
And I do wonder how that financially works out, though. But there's greater minds than I that claim that this is absolutely true. But I do wonder in America, you've got at the moment you've got insurance companies pay for it. Well, how does that sustain itself? Because it's not cheap. I think it costs about $250,000 to have phalloplasty, which is when you have the flesh of the forearm removed to create a pretend penis that never works. I think you can get some sort of manual pump.
That never works.
I mean, it's
It
I
it gives
these
new
kids
meaning
know
to
what I
Posey. It gives new meaning to one off the wrist, the forearm flesh there. Sorry, it's not great.
but but I look, all of us adults, once we get to sort of an adult age where we can have an adult relationship, one of the joys of an adult relationship is sexual intimacy with someone you care about or you fancy. So what we're doing to children right now is we're robbing them of any chance of that.
Yeah,
Because once they go on puberty blockers, you disrupt the brain from the body so it doesn't match. And then they're never going to have a sexual relationship. And I just think that that sort of abuse, to rob someone of something that most of us pretty much enjoy, is just absolute abuse. And I can't believe that we are doing anything that would disrupt that for somebody when they're 8, 9, 10. In America, you can have a double mastectomy at 13
wow.
with your parents' permission. And they can take your kids away if you don't go along with their
I
gender identity bullshit.
I hope that in the next few years, all this progressive bullshit is just wiped off the slate of history, and these people are seen as the abusers they are. It's just shocking they're doing this to kids. There's a school in Brighton, you've probably heard of it, and there was a bit of a trans mafia there, and something like 30% of the kids are now trans, and they've been targeting the special needs ones, the autistic ones. Oh, he wants
Yeah.
some friends, wants some attention, and watch what happens when you wear a dress.
Mm.
Barking mad.
Girls are most at risk, and girls have always been most at risk because teenage life is much more difficult for girls. Your body changes, you become public property, and I don't think you have to be a feminist to acknowledge that once girls get breasts, their life changes
Yeah,
quite
no,
dramatically.
sure.
You either become something that all the boys like and you enjoy that attention, or you absolutely hate it. But also, periods are really embarrassing, and bodily functions are quite embarrassing. And so, what better to escape that than to wear a binder and say that you're a boy?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, growing up's hard.
Mm.
Giving people growing up an out for that difficulty is not the answer, and God, not that out. I had someone who's become a friend on here, a bloke called Tarquin, who transitioned years ago, and he now regrets it totally. There's nothing about him that you'd think that he was a trans woman. He's just a bloke without a penis, and that's what he said to me. He said, "Now I've sort of woken up," and he was pressured. As soon as he mentioned it, they were on to him. Do this, do that, do it, and don't let society hold you down. And he was the victim of like a propaganda campaign, and he said, and now I'm just an old man without a penis, and I wholly hold them responsible. And
And they don't let you go either. They don't support you when you change your mind.
oh no,
Or yeah,
he's had human excrement put through his door, and you name it. Is yeah, shocking.
it's a cult.
It really is. God, it's awful. But that whole delusion thing, and if you've got a mental problem, we're going to change your body. There's people called what are they called when you lose a limb? What's that when you lose a limb?
Amputees.
Pardon?
Amputees.
That's it. There's people who call themselves voluntary amputees. They want a missing leg. They want a missing arm because They think they shouldn't have it, and all kinds of bullshit reasons. And a couple of people have actually taken shotguns to their legs because doctors refuse to whip a leg off. And I'm just thinking, if they were treated the same way as trans people were, I've got this dysphoria, I shouldn't have two legs, I was born in the wrong body, I should be physically handicapped. And are they going to get the similar kind of treatment because that's their delusion? I mean, it's...
Well, I think there were surgeries where surgeons actually endorsed that stuff, but fortunately it didn't really catch on.
imagine trying to spread that one around the schools.
Well, I think there's someone who's in a wheelchair, and it's a man, and he claims to be a disabled woman.
Oh,
But then there's a bloke in Canada who claims to be a Hindu woman.
transracial.
I don't even, you see, I don't believe that these men really believe it. I mean, I often think about if my husband vomits or I vomit like a woman, he vomits like a volcano. So I've never heard a man vomit quietly.
Yeah.
In my years of hearing men vomit, which is fortunately not that much anymore, and I sort of think, do these blokes, when they, like, in their most raw moments, in their most human, unwatched moments, do they really act any differently than they did 10 years before when they knew they were men? And I don't think they do. I think it's all lies.
I live in Cambodia, I'm there now, but I spent years in Thailand, on and off over 10 years. And a friend of mine said to me, "Those lady boys look amazing." He said, "They look amazing." I said, "Oh no, they do look amazing. They're quite amazing." And he said, "Well, what's it like spending a bit of time with them?" I said, "Well, the longer you spend with them, the further the illusion breaks down, because occasionally they cough or they grunt. And they go from being this, they've painted a woman's face onto their male face, and then they'll sort of go, and I said, you'll go to bed with a woman, but you're going to wake up with a bloke with makeup on, and he's farting and he's yawning like a man, and he's a bloke. It's a bloke. You're in bed with a man." That's it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can't take a millennia of evolution and just chuck it away with a bit of makeup.
No, thankfully. I while talking about Thailand, people ask me about the Thai culture with all of that, and although I've heard things are unfortunately changing in the 10 or 15 years I was going out there, I never heard of any LGBT pressure groups, any demands, any of that entitlement. They just get on with it, and because of that, they've kind of been accepted it far without legislation, without shaming, without getting banned from social media. You're not going to get in trouble for criticising them, but people kind of don't, because they haven't been trying to change our lives. They haven't been saying, "You've got to call me this." And
well, it's also a route out of poverty for those men, isn't it?
no, without a doubt. Yeah.
It's I guess if you're gay, I don't know how Thai are with homosexuality, but I guess if you're a gay man and you're quite small featured, or even if you're not, then, and you can get a ticket out of abject poverty, then I guess you pretty much do anything.
No, that is very much part of why there's so many of them out there, and that's what they've told me. I've talked to them about what's going on in the West with the whole trans thing, and they're just gobsmacked. It's like a dream to them. It's like a mad dream. Posie, Kellie, what do you get called?
Either.
Posie's so excellent. You've got a fantastic name though. It's like quad-barreled. It's like a space marine coming.
No, I got married. I didn't want to give up I didn't want to become Mrs. Minshall like my mother-in-law. So I was like, well, I'll double my name on the day. And then I thought, oh, fiddlesticks, I've got a double-barreled first name.
Yeah.
And I think on Twitter, one of the things said, "I really like that woman with a handful of names."
What have you got coming up? Have you got anything? Is there anything you're looking at doing in the near future?
Well, I've been to Washington this year. That was very exciting. I think now what we have to concentrate on is the structures and the institutions that are falling. So you've got the Equality and Human Rights Commission. I mean, this is what's happened. You've had trans lobbyists and they've been around sort of talking about trans rights since the 90s, and maybe before. And the European Court of Human Rights is the reason we have all this shit. So you've had them, and what they've done before it was ever an issue, when it was just a handful of people, they've infiltrated organisations and institutions. So they're in our judiciary, and they've trained the police and judges. Like, I had a friend who was punched to the floor by a 6'2" bloke who called himself trans. And in the court case, she got no compensation. Her name's Maria McLachlan. And she got no compensation because she misgendered in court. The bloke that punched her in the face. So you've got all these institutions, so they need rolling back. We need to really focus on the police, who, I mean, historically have always been quite shit to women.
Yeah.
But now they're arresting women for calling men men.
No, I know. Absurd.
So, and they're just about to go into schools to say that any child that says a girl can use girls' changing rooms, because that's not going to be an issue, is it?
No, of course. It's absolutely shocking. I saw a lot of girls get banned from their own school the other day because they wanted to wear skirts. I mean, say what you want about skirts and trousers, but give them the choice. Banning them is absurd.
Well, no one was doing that for girls 20 years ago, were they?
No, exactly.
So, I know that even in primary school, boys have sort of lifted up girls' skirts. No primary school went, look, let's stop this now. Let's let girls wear trousers. It's when boys start kicking up a fuss about all the trans stuff, that's when we listen.
Yeah, absurd, absolutely absurd. When you talk about these people that have infiltrated the police, etc., etc., I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's part of the long march into the institutions, which is the overhang of the Marxists. You know, it's all the social justice thing. They're all socialists. They're all Marxists. They're now existing largely unchallenged at the level of media, the academy, universities, and law. And they're, like you say, they've totally infiltrated these institutions. They're teaching our kids it. I was taught all this bullshit. I studied art for 7 years after school. I got an OND, then a foundation, then a Bachelor of Arts, then a Master of Arts. And I went in as like an acid casualty. I came out as an acid casualty, but I came out as a communist. And communism was taught to us, not critically, not as like this is one of the meta-narratives of the 20th century. There's a pile of bodies that make the Nazis look like school kids. No, we were taught it as this is how you're going to save the world and get out there and get active with it.
It's just nuts. I mean, what I really struggle with is that, so I was a fully paid up member of the Labour Party until about 2015, 2016. And then when I started being castigated by them and called a TERF and a hateful bigot, everything for me just flipped. And it went from, I've believed all these things for a really long time and I don't know why. But it's just been accepted, like when it rains, I get wet. The Tories are evil, although I'd still probably go along with that. But that like white working class men are the scum of the earth, and all these things that I'm supposed to have believed.
Yep.
So I now sit on the other side. I'm out back through the looking glass, and I'm examining everything. So when someone says that person is, I'm like, well, where's your evidence? Can I see it? I need to see it for myself. I don't. But many women on my side are still not there, and I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can see one issue for what it is and how it's been portrayed and how society is being coerced and groomed to accept this, but you can't see that maybe that's the same for loads of other things. Yeah. It's very, very weird.
It's amazing that you said there you believed all these ideas, but you didn't know why. And I had much the same thing. I mean, I was all in that the Union Jack flag is a vile thing. Oh, England is a horrible place. And when I actually was what we call red pilled, you said come out of the looking glass. And I think that nicely brings together Cassie Jay's documentary, which I think she refers to both. Do you know Cassie Jay's documentary, The Red Pill? Oh, she was a feminist. She was a proper feminist. And she thought, I'm going to research the men's rights activists, that one of the most demonized organizations on the planet. So she started this investigation, and she says, "Oh, it was like going through down the rabbit hole through the looking glass." I get a bit confused with all these. And she ended up coming out the other end, not a feminist, but that's. I'll send you a link to it, Cassie Jay, fantastic documentary. But yeah, we call it getting red pilled, and I was as well because I had all these beliefs, all this communism, and I didn't really know why by my sort of mid-30s. I was like, why do you still believe all this stuff? And I was thinking, well, I kind of like the romance of it. I kind of like the T-shirts. I've got some nice Soviet flags. Ken Loach makes some nice films about the Spanish Civil War. But there was nothing at its heart. And this hatred for my own country that has afforded me an incredible quality of life. And I just had to start looking at that. And I was thinking, hang on, that all came from my state comprehensive. All my teachers were socialists, and they were, it was like England is a vile place. And I believed all that stuff for so long. And it was amazing to just let it all go and actually start investigating who I am, what I actually thought, and having a freedom away from decades of the same propaganda that you've talked about coming at us from the law, from the media, from the universities. They've done a good job on a lot of people.
Really good job. Really, I mean, I talked to someone at a party the other night, and she goes, "Oh, but why can't the child transition?" I was like, "Can you hear yourself?" And she's going, "Yeah, but I don't know why." And I said, "Well, maybe you should just listen to the many things I've just said. And that'll give you loads of good reasons." She's going, "Yeah, but why?" And it just feels really mean. I said, "Well, it feels really mean to say to my 10-year-old, you can't have Cocoa Pops during the week for breakfast.
Yeah.
It's a weekend special." And she's like, "Yeah, but that's bad for their health." And I was like,
Yeah, losing your penis and being stuffed full of chemicals has its problems as well.
But what happened in the 90s with Pi and Peter Tatchell? So I recently read something he wrote in 1997 that's still on his website about how young boys. Basically, it was a story. It sounded like one of his own pervy little fantasies, to be honest. But it was a story about a boy who had his first gay experience at 8, and in a swimming pool after practice, just one time, him and this boy gave each other oral sex. And I'm thinking, 8, okay, that's got to be a product of some sort of abuse. Then he had full sex when he was 12. Then he had sex with a girl when they were both about 10 and a half. And it was all this stuff about, and now he's 14. It's really terrible for him because he can't have a sexual relationship with someone in their mid-20s because they'll be criminalized.
Degeneracy.
He's been loitering, waiting for this sort of Trojan horse and bollocks for 20 years, that man. So somebody just to say, hey, LGBT, let's have the P. Let's have these minor attracted people who rebranded paedophiles who say no contact. Now, I don't take cocaine, and yet in any of my bios on any platform, I don't say, love cocaine, don't take it.
Yeah.
So why anybody needs to know, I want to fuck kids, but I'm not doing it.
No.
But they're all banding in together. They're all coming back.
And it really doesn't understand how desire works either. I'm not buying that at all. What do you make of? Are you aware of Desmond is Amazing?
Yes.
Did you see him stripping at the gay club while the grown men were putting money in his panties?
His mother was one of the old club kids. So I hadn't really heard of them, but they were sort of these quite young. You remember like Amanda de Cadenet?
Okay, yeah.
One of those, we all sort of, and the woman, the really young girl who married that pervy old Rolling Stone, and everyone basically called her this gold digging, money grabbing whore, and actually he was just a filthy, dirty.
Bill Wyman.
Yeah. And it's really weird because she was like a wild child when really she was a victim of abuse.
I think she was anorexic or bulimic. She had a massive head and a tiny. Mandy Smith, wasn't it? Yeah.
Just awful. And I think Desmond's mother was like a version of that in the United States. So these like very young people, I may be quoting all of this, so don't take my word. Do your own research. But so she also allowed him to go on this podcast with a convicted murderer and his mate, and it's online. There's no secret, and they interview Desmond, and behind Desmond is a picture of a boy face down with the word Rehypnol painted in the thing. I mean, if it couldn't be more paedophilic imagery, if you basically wrote pedo behind two men, but she's just desperate for fame. And I think his sister has come out and said how repulsive all of it is. And she's not very old. She's about 14, 15.
I mean, it's a shame, but I'm sure there's him, there's a few others. I'm sure they're going to be making our point for us in 4 or 5 years when they're cutting themselves to pieces. They're sticking needles in their arm all day long. You know, this isn't to say it's not going to turn out well is stupid, because it's already gone wrong. This isn't something we need to wait to manifest. I saw him on one of his videos, and there was like this drag queens behind him, and they were just bantering, and she said something about snorting ketamine on a Tuesday, and he was sort of like, yeah, wow, what? You sure?
I mean, I understand it. I understand abusive parents and cycles and exploiting your kids and all of those things. I don't understand how anybody is stupid enough not to see it.
Yeah.
You know, when you've got reasonable parents who talk about them being brave and celebrating this boy, that's the bit I don't get.
Yeah, well, it's all part of the Church of Progressive Orthodoxy, and if you go against it, you're in trouble. As you know, you're banned off of Twitter. I'm sure they'll keep coming after you. I'm sure they'll keep coming after me. But there you go. Posie, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We've almost done an hour. I will put the links. What do you want me to link to? Facebook?
Facebook, yeah. Unfortunately, because I've got too many connections, I can only have followers, and I just feel like such an arse.
No, that's fair enough.
And people follow me. And I'm also on Instagram, although I don't use it very much, and YouTube. But I do quite a lot of Facebook Lives.
Okay.
And I would just implore anybody, if you're remotely interested, go and have a look at your children's schools. That's really, really important that you make your voices known. Go and have a chat. Some people don't want to come out and say that they don't agree with all this stuff. They're a little bit worried. And that's, you know, everyone's perfectly entitled. I mean, I don't know what's going to take to make you speak up. But go and talk to your kids' school. Go and, on my website, I've got a free download of a talk I gave at the House of Lords called
Duty of Care.
Transgender Duty of Care. So this was First Do No Harm, the ethics of transgender healthcare. You can download that for free and take it and pop a copy in to your GP surgery. But we all have to do small acts where we just speak up all the time. But yeah, if you want to find me, that's where I am. I'm Facebook and YouTube.
Brilliant. I'll put those links in the description. Posie, thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Don't go off the line just yet, because I'll just say a couple of things to you afterwards. But thank you very much. And everyone who enjoyed this video, as usual, share it far and wide. There's problems out there and we need to sort them out. Bye. We want this debate. We're confident in this debate because we've looked at what's going on. And we're sure that you've got it wrong.
Thanks for the war.